Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
And I'm Mary Kay Andrews.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, and librarians. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome the one and only Sophie Kinsella to discuss her incredible new novel, What Does It Feel Like? The book was just released on October 8th, and we are so excited to speak with Sophie about it.
But first, we have just a quick reminder to check out all the fun things we've got going on in our Friends and Fiction community at friendsandfiction.com.
There you'll find our show schedule, details on upcoming in-person events, and links to our bookshop.org page, to the Friends and Fiction official book club with Brenda and Lisa, to our merch store, and our newsletter sign-up. In other words, if you want to know more about anything Friends and Fiction offers, and we offer a lot, be sure to check out friendsandfiction.com.
We also encourage you to find our Friends and Fiction Endless Stories newsletter on Substack. You can read all our free weekly posts on the Substack website or app. And if you subscribe, and we wish you would, the post will land in your inbox so you never miss a paid thing. It's so much more than just an email newsletter. For paid subscribers, also we wish you would. We offer incredible extra content, including deeper dives with all of our weekly show guests, plus monthly roundtable discussions between the 4 of us and our author friends, such as the one Patti and Ron just did with several well-known librarians about the magic and secrets of libraries. It costs just $5 a month, or $50 a year for the paid subscription. But remember, you can always start free and upgrade. Check us out at friendsandfiction.substack.com.
That's right. Okay, well, now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our friend Sophie Kinsella. I love how we say that. We really level jump there. I've met her for 30 seconds backstage on screen, but we're friends now, so that's good. Sophie has sold more than 45 million copies of her books in more than 60 countries and has been translated into 40 languages. She first hit the UK bestseller list in September 2000 with her first novel in the Shopaholic series, The Secret Dream World of a Shopaholic, also published as Confessions of a Shopaholic, which for me personally was the Sophie gateway drug. The book's heroine, Becky Bloomwood, captured the hearts of readers worldwide and has since featured in 8 further best-selling books, including Shopaholic Ties the Knot and Shopaholic and Sister. Becky Bloomwood also came to the big screen in 2009 with the hit Disney movie Confessions of a Shopaholic, starring Isla Fisher and Hugh Dancy. Sophie has also written 12 standalone novels, which have all been bestsellers in the UK, USA, and other countries around the world. In 2014, she published a young adult novel, Finding Audrey, about a teenage girl with social anxiety and her madcap family. And she also has an illustrated book for young readers in her Mummy, Fairy, and Me series. She really is a slacker. Sophie wrote her first novel under her real name, Madeline Wickham, at 24 while working as a financial journalist. The Tennis Party was immediately hailed as a success by critics and public alike, and she went on to publish 6 more novels as Madeline Wickham. Sophie was born in London and lives in the UK with her husband and family. Her new novella, What Does It Feel Like?, was just released on October 8th, and it is her most autobiographical work to date. So Chip, can you bring Sophie on so we can hear a little bit more about it?
Hi.
Hi, Sophie. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Oh my goodness. Well, I know that we speak for a lot of the Friends and Fiction community when we say it's just such a thrill to meet you and to have you here. And you have just long been a favorite author of ours. And so this is just a huge honor to welcome you to the show today.
You are so nice. You are so nice. Thank you so much. And you're right. We're friends. We're friends. I always feel like that.
Thanks.
Especially if you read the same books, then you feel like you're friends of the characters, so you're friends through that. I always feel that books link people tremendously.
Definitely.
That's so well said. I love that. Well, your latest novella is so beautiful and so heartfelt and surprisingly a little funny too, which we're going to talk to you a little bit more about. But it is about an author named Eve who wakes up in the hospital with very little memory of what has happened, why she is there, or much else about her life for that matter. She discovers she has been diagnosed with a glioblastoma, a particularly aggressive form of brain cancer, and must learn to do everything from walking to remembering to writing again, all while dealing with the pain of her diagnosis, with a lot of humor and a lot of heart, I might add, as I mentioned. So that's a little bit about what the book is about. Can you tell us what it's really about?
That would be me. it's the story that I have been going through for the last couple of years. And so I'm like Eve. I woke up in hospital. I didn't know what was going on. I was very confused. I got told that I was diagnosed with brain cancer, and I went through rehab. I went through life with my family afterwards. I went through a bit of a journey, and it's not the most obvious thing to turn that into a book, but I found that when I was better enough to write, I wanted to write desperately. You'll know what this is like. I just had to write, but I didn't know what story to write. And I thought, well, I'll write another rom-com, but somehow none of my ideas felt powerful enough. And I think it's because I had this huge story begging to be told, and I'd been living it, and it was so extraordinary what I'd been through that I had to put it down on paper and tell it as a story.
Well, it is extraordinary, and I think it's going to just resonate with people so incredibly deeply. So
Yeah, I think what struck both Kristy and myself was how hard a decision that must have been for you to share your diagnosis as publicly as you have. And I know you've said that you've always processed your life through your writing and turn your own life into a narrative. But this is another level of opening up. Was it a hard decision to come to? And yeah, that's, I think, my big question.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. At first, I was very private. We didn't tell the world for a long time. And partly to protect the children, because they didn't know straight away, and we had to figure out how best to tell them and what to tell them when, and we didn't want them finding out carelessly. So we kept everything very tight. But after a while, that becomes a bit of a burden, trying to keep things quiet. And there's no reason. And it almost starts to feel like you're ashamed of it, which is the opposite. So I decided to tell the community, and all the while, I was just aware that I had this story to share. And then I thought, well, people might be curious. They might be interested. They might be helped if they know that someone else has gone through this extraordinary experience. And what I felt I could bring to it was a kind of humor, a humor that I can't help but put into everything I do. I found the funny side of it even while I was in the hospital. And I thought, well, I'll write a book that is completely honest, that is very optimistic. It's honest, but it's optimistic. And to honor that story, I needed to share myself in a way that I hadn't done before. So I just had to decide, well, I'm going to share as much as I need to for the story. And then I will draw the line at certain aspects of my life. So although the children feature in the book, I don't go into their lives. There's still an element of privacy, and ditto, there are no sex scenes in the book because this really is a portrait of my marriage. It's very honest and true to what my marriage has been like since getting ill. And so we closed the bedroom door, if you please. So it's a mixture of keeping private and sharing. And I hope that I shared enough to make the story powerful and to resonate.
I think you definitely did.
You certainly did. So is that why you decided to make this a novel instead of a memoir? So you could be a little choosier about what you decided to include?
Absolutely. So I thought about writing a memoir, but do you know what? And you might relate to this too. It's not what I do. What I do is I make up stories. That's my happy place, is making up stories. And then I'm in charge of the ending. I could give this a happy ending. I mean, this is really important to me. I create optimistic stories with happy endings. And in real life, I don't know what the ending is, but in this book, I was able to give it a happy ending. I could play around with details. So if I wrote a memoir, my worry would be that I would get the wrong date, or I would name the wrong doctor, and people would say it didn't happen like that. And I'm not really interested in those details. This wasn't supposed to be a kind of accurate beat by beat tell. It was more, it's not called what happened. It's called what does it feel like, and emphasis on the feel. It's about what you actually go through when you have such an extraordinary thing happen to you.
Yeah, it must have been powerful to feel like you had control of your story, and that you get to tell it in whatever way you want. You can novelize it, or you can write it as a memoir. But I love the feeling that you took that power.
Yeah. Yes, it was cathartic for me, because I was writing the truth, and then I was making it the truth that I wanted it to be. So I was making it hopeful, optimistic, and hopefully funny as well. And that comes from everyday life, I have to say, because I am somebody who, I can't help it. I make flippant jokes. I find the funny side of life, and that's how I get through.
Well, I think you have to. You feel, I know for myself, my family's been through a medical situation. And when you feel so powerless, it's a great feeling to say, I'm taking that power back.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. So when I was wheeled in for this operation, and this is a brain tumor being removed, it was an 8-hour operation. It was in this big, scary operating theatre, and I was being wheeled in on this trolley. And I thought, well, I'm going to pretend I'm at the spa. And I said, the surgeon came up in his scrubs to say hello, and it's all quite serious. And I couldn't help myself. I said, well, this is a very fancy spa you've got here. And he laughed. And I thought, well, okay, now this is me. I can't help it. I have to tell a joke.
And I would like the sugar scrub.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want the lavender.
Anesthesia.
Oh gosh. Well, Sophie, you've had such a lot going on. Your novel, The Burnout, released during your treatment. And then you decided to go ahead and write and edit a novella while recovering from brain surgery. You're making us feel like real losers here, slackers. We just hate it.
We didn't complain about nothing today. Nothing.
If I stub my toe and I bleed, I'm after this. No. You stated that you had to learn to do everything over again. Was there ever a moment when you thought that you wouldn't ever write again?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, in the hospital, I assumed that the burnout would never come out. And that made me really sad, because that was a book I put a lot into, and it was in manuscript form, and it needed to be edited. And as you will know, that's quite a process. And I remember thinking, well, I can't do it. I don't have the cognitive faculty to do this. What am I going to do? And I said to my husband, well, we've lost, so much has happened. And one of the things is that the burnout will never be out. And then gradually I kind of got a bit better. I was having my memory was being slightly restored, all a bit better. And I said, actually, I think with a lot of help, I can do this. So my husband helped me. We went through it just page by page, slowly. I didn't do maybe as many edits as I might have done, but I did enough to make it, ready for publication. And I still don't quite know how I did it, but I was just so determined to try to get this book out, because, you've worked on a manuscript for that long. The idea that it gets stalled at quite a late stage, it was just so miserable. And my publishers were incredibly understanding. And in fact, my agent took on a lot of the copy edits, and people, took the weight off me as much as they could. Although nobody can substitute for your voice. Nobody could make those edits because it's me, it's my voice. So I had to do it myself. And when it came out, I was just, I was so happy.
My fear whenever I'm at the last stages of a book is that something will happen and my poor little book will be stillborn. My thing that I've labored over and grieved over and celebrated. And then, if something happens and it doesn't come out. And it's, I think probably that's why all of us go a little bit overboard promoting our books, because we want them out in the world. We want to see them, stand up and walk and run, right?
Yeah. It's like your children, isn't it? It's like it's like giving birth to a baby and then just giving it every chance that it could have.
Yeah. And now, did the amazing reception you got to the Burnout, I bet that must have been a real buoy during your treatment.
That was amazing. Because it made me remember, for so long I was just a patient in a hospital bed and then at home and rehab and carers and the whole thing. And then suddenly I was like, no, I'm a novelist as well, and I remembered that and I felt validated in that. And it wasn't just the reception to the book, which obviously delighted me. But it was also the kind of personal reception, the kind of good wishes and feeling of being connected to my readers again, which I loved, because I couldn't go out on the road and do a book tour or anything like that. But just reading responses online just cheered me up so much.
I love that. Well, Sophie, we've talked about this a little bit, but we watched the interview that you did on GMA with your husband, and the two of you talking about what you've been through together, and of course, I think the relationship, in the novella, you mentioned mirrors your own. So it sounds like your husband has been, just kind of your number one cheerleader and support system through all of this. When you told him that you wanted to write about this, was he immediately supportive, or was he like, you have so much going on, don't add this to your plate? What was his response?
It's a mixture. It's a mixture. It still is, because he knows what I'm like. I get ideas and I just am desperate to run with them. And I get obsessed by my work, by my writing. And at the same time, I'm still getting over quite a serious illness. So he was, I think, quite torn between supporting me and saying, take it easy. And I would say that this is a work in progress, that this is still a dynamic which happens to this day, even like earlier on today, because all the time I'm saying, I want to write this and I want to write that. And then the reality checks, I have medical, appointments and I have to go and have a scan, and real life, sort of comes into play. So
you have to go on Friends in Fiction and talk about your
absolutely. Exactly. And so I think I'm constantly trying to juggle what I would love to do as a novelist and what I'm able to do as a human being. And it's just an ongoing process.
Well,
I think we would say, all of us on Friends in Fiction, what would we do without our supportive spouses?
Yeah. I mean, I would be nowhere without him. He's been absolutely at my side throughout all of this. And actually, I remember once I got quite teary. As you can imagine, we're on a bit of a roller coaster with our emotions. And there was one time when I was, feeling quite upset and tearful. And I looked at him and I said, you didn't sign up for this. And he just said, yes, I did, in sickness and in health. And I realized what a special man I'd married, because he has not hesitated once. He's been there at the hospitals. He's turned into my pharmacist, because of my terrible memory. It's always a slight surprise to me when he says it's time for these pills. I'm like, oh.
Pills? What pills?
Exactly. Honestly, every day I'm freshly astonished that I have to take pills. So
Groundhog Day, but for pills.
I really do need him. I need him so much. And we've become closer as a result of all of this. And that has been a silver lining, is that we've been forced to spend time together. We've been forced into some really quite big, deep conversations that I think otherwise we wouldn't have had. We've had to delve into topics which we probably wouldn't have covered. And I think it's just made us grow closer.
Definitely.
I have to ask you about this one chapter of the novella, because it was, again, one of those things that is so sadly hilarious. And it's something that I think everyone has probably been in a situation with, someone who, a parent or a grandparent or just someone in their life that they're having to care for. And it's the chapter where Eve is like, oh, no. I don't need a caregiver. I'm absolutely fine. And, they're like, oh, how'd you get that bruise? Oh, well, I fell in the shower, but I don't need you to help me with the shower. Or did I take my I took my medicine, but I don't need, I thought that was so was that you in your early, like that really happened to you?
Yeah, okay. That was me. Yeah. I was in a lot of denial. In fact, even in the hospital, I kept forgetting that I couldn't walk, and I would just get out of bed and fall on the floor. Yeah. And I kind of slightly resented the position that I was in. I didn't want to be wearing a hospital gown. I didn't want to be having rehab. I wanted to be absolutely fine. And there was a stage where Henry couldn't be with me, and he did hire some people to look after me. And I would start all the time. I would be just like Eve, like, well, I don't really know why you're here. I'm so sorry, I'll be wasting your time. And then it would be, as you say, forget the meds, or, get up in the night and am I going to fall on my face? So, I realized that I did need them, but each time it was a bit of a struggle.
You wrote about it very well. It's very relatable.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to share. My daughter was dying of liver failure, and she has 2 young kids, and so she was staying at my house so I could be there and be right next to her and take better care. And she kept falling. So at one point we borrowed a baby monitor because I said, I can't trust you. You're going to get up in the middle of the night and fall. And so I got a baby monitor for her.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that. Everybody has their stuff.
Yeah. Damn it. Now I'm crying. So, Kristy, you got to take the next.
You made it so long, though. Okay, Sophie, we often have writers watching us, and we love to get writing tips from amazing authors like you. And your character, Eve, in a fictional interview says, my advice is to write the book you would like to read yourself. Visualize going into a bookshop and finding the perfect book, the book you would buy immediately. What does it look like? What is it about? What genre is it? Then write that book. And above all, write the truth. Write what you know and do it convincingly. I don't mean write nonfiction. I mean write the truth about life, whatever genre you're in. So is this really a Sophie Kinsella writing tip, or would you give a different tip to aspiring authors?
No, do you know, that is the tip I give. I always say, write the book that you would love to read, because I think, well, as you know, before you were a writer, you were a reader. And so the chances are that the book that would please you as a reader is the book that will please other people. And don't think, oh, well, I'll write for the market. The market wants this, try and second guess it. Just write from the heart. Write what instinctively you would love to read. I mean, I remember when I wrote the first Shopaholic book, I remember thinking, well, I think this is funny and I would laugh at this. And I had no idea if anybody else would find this funny, but I still wrote it because I thought, well, I would find this a funny book to read. And that's all I had to go on. And little did I know that everybody would relate. But I didn't start by saying, I bet there's a whole group of people out there who want to read about shopping. That wasn't it at all. I just wrote a book to please myself.
And then you started a trend on accident.
Yeah. I mean, I had no idea. It would be so big. I just thought I was writing something that maybe a few other people would relate to.
Yeah, I think the advice we always give and that we always hear is don't try to write to a trend, because by the time your book is done, the trend will be gone.
Oh, yes. And also you're imposing it on yourself. You're not, it's not writing from within. It's
So
sort of, it's too external. I think that you just have to write from the heart, and maybe you'll set the new trend.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that.
Definitely words to live by. Sophie, and I shouldn't even call you that because you and I have something in common. I too was a journalist in my former life, and I started out my fiction career writing under my real name and then switched to my pseudonym, Mary Kay Andrews. Now, some of your readers might not know that your real name is Madeline Wickham, and you've written under both names. Now, can you tell us why the switch?
Yes, so that is my real name, and I wrote 7 books, I think, under that name. They were slightly different from Shopaholic.
Right.
So they are, I mean, all the books I've written as Sophie Kinsella have been fast and funny and generally first person, confessional, and that was a new style for me. So the Madeline Wickham books were all, they were funny, but not comedy. They had funny elements to them, but they weren't so silly and ridiculous and absurd. And when I had the first idea for Shopaholic, I knew that I wanted to make it a different style of book from what I was doing. So then I had this dilemma. Do I say to my audience, well, I'm changing direction, or do I just do it secretly and hope, see if anybody notices the difference? But it felt like a new start for me.
Yeah.
It felt like a new start, a new style, a new voice.
Mm-hmm,
and
definitely.
So I thought, well, I'll do it under a pseudonym. And the other reason was I didn't know if anybody would like it. So I thought, well, if no one likes it, then I've done it under the pseudonym. I won't tell anybody it's me. And then I'll just quietly forget about it. So that's fine. So that was my little plan. I thought I'll do it as a side project and nobody will know it's me. And then we'll just see how it goes.
Now, do people ever ask you if Madeline's coming back?
Oh, for a long time they did. Yeah. I would get these plaintive letters saying, well, I know that the Shopaholic series is very popular, but I preferred your Madeline Wickham books. When are we going to see one of those? And for about a year or two, I tried to do both. I did write another Madeline Wickham book after Shopaholic, but in the end, there was just too much going on. So, and I had sort of got this taste for comedy. It's quite hard to give up once you've got that taste for being funny. It's hard to go back.
Yeah, it's an opiate.
Yes, it really is. Yeah, gets us through.
That's true. Well, I'm a huge Shopaholic fan, and I feel like it's one of the series that made me want to become a writer. So thank you so much for writing those. And they, I just love them. I can't even tell you. But I remember like reading the first one and thinking like, this is just so great.
Thank you so much. That makes me so happy, and that it inspired you to write. That's just tremendous.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't even know why I say that, because I'm not particularly funny, but I don't know. It was something about, they were very approachable, I think, at maybe the age and stage where I was in my life. And I felt like, writing doesn't have to be this particular thing that maybe I was kind of learning in school. Like it could be something that was more entertaining and more kind of from the heart, as you said. But your sweet husband said on GMA, I love this, that your characters tend to be a little bit of you and a little bit of exaggeration, which I just love. And you told the funniest story about, how you got the idea for the Shopaholic series. So can you tell us about that? And how did that series change your life?
It just changed my life completely. And I remember it distinctly when I had the idea. I was in a shop and I just started thinking about Visa bills, because obviously I was in a shop and I was like, oh, my Visa bill. And then I imagined a girl opening her Visa bill and almost going through the stages of grief, the shock. The first of was the shock. Then there's the anger, the denial. This can't be me. And this is what I used to feel when I used to look at my own Visa bill. Like, wait, this can't be me. I can't have done this. And the bargaining. So I could see that this was something to write about. And the more I thought about it, I was thinking, well, has anyone else done this? Has anyone else actually written about shopping? And I couldn't think of any books that had just taken shopping as the topic. But I talked about shopping with my girlfriends. We all used to joke about it. We used to do it. We used to go together. And I thought, well, this is something that we all do. This is, this really could be the subject of a book. And I remember searching Shopaholic to see if this was out there already. And I couldn't believe it wasn't. So I just really quickly wrote this book and just had so much fun with it. And then I had the idea to have the letters from the bank manager and to have letters throughout the book. And I used my own experience. So she's a financial journalist, so she really should know better. And that was me. The job she has in that first Shopaholic book, I had that job. And I was busking it just like she busks it. I didn't know what I was writing. I was writing about pensions. I didn't know about pensions. I was somehow cobbling together these articles and, listening to people on the phone and just writing what they said. And so I had all this material. I went to the shops and I was a financial journalist. And I introduced a gorgeous, dreamy hero. And the book was complete.
I love it.
Every book needs a gorgeous, dreamy hero.
Yes. As writers, I feel like the mythical film adaptation is something that is always like a little dangling carrot, but we hold on to it very loosely because I think we've all had those moments where we thought something was finally going to make it and then it all sort of falls apart. So how did it feel to finally cross that finish line and see your work on the big screen? Or was it maybe secondary to the books and the writing and what you love?
Do you know, it was kind of both, because at the time it was just surreal. And I think particularly because I spent a lot of time on set, I got kind of co-opted in to help the director and to kind of be a consultant. And I, in fact, ended up being called associate producer or something very grand. So for me, I had this extraordinary experience of seeing what it's like to be on the set of a big budget Hollywood movie and watching it be put together, and feeling these goosebumps every time I saw something that I had just invented in my little room being turned into something that a whole crew was putting together. I can remember being on Fifth Avenue and they were putting up the sign Denny and George in a shop window. And this is a name that I had invented, just, sitting in my little room. I was like, well, she needs a name for the scarf. And I thought of Denny and George. And then there we are, this whole crew assembled to film Denny and George. I just couldn't believe it. But the thing is, it never did take over from the books, I don't think, for me. For me, Becky is the Becky in the books, not the Becky on the screen. I love Isla Fisher. I think she's really funny. I think the movie is hilarious. But I have my own Becky, and I never lost my own Becky. And when I carried on writing more books in the series, it was my Becky I was writing. And they have their own arc. So I think it's a bit of the best, the best of both worlds, really.
Sounds like it. Okay, Sophie, if you would stick around, we have more to talk to you about. But first, a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there. Now, for all of you watching and listening, we encourage you. We're telling you, okay, we're just telling you, rush out and buy your copies of What Does It Feel Like? Now, the perfect place to do that is the Friends in Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll be getting at a discount and helping to fund our show, all while supporting our guests and our beloved independent booksellers nationwide.
We also want to remind you to follow us on Instagram and join our Facebook group, which is officially more than 250,000 members strong. When you visit friendsinfiction.com, you can stay up to date about everything we have going on, and you can sign up for Friends and Fiction Endless Stories on Substack, which is chock full of bonus content.
Okay, now we're back to Sophie. Now, this might be a tough question, but Sophie, do you have a favorite book among your novels? And if by some bizarre chance someone out there hasn't read you, where would you suggest they start? Like, is there a Sophie Kinsella gateway drug?
Oh, interesting question. I tell you what makes it interesting is that I do find that some readers are so passionately attached to the Shopaholic series that they almost can't contemplate anything else. And some people prefer the standalone novels. Mm-hmm. I've really found this. So I would say, am I allowed to pick two? I would say Okay, so I would pick the first Shopaholic book as being the place where it all began, where I found my new voice. I invented Becky Bloomwood. I started this whole roller coaster of shopping and loving and laughing that I just so enjoyed really over these last years. But then I think I would also highlight The Undomestic Goddess, which is a book I wrote about a workaholic lawyer who makes a terrible mistake, runs away, and becomes a housekeeper, even though she doesn't know how to cook or even how to use an iron. And it was just such a happy book for me to write. I loved writing the stressed out lawyer. I loved writing the comedy scenes where she can't operate any household appliances and she has to end up ordering in catering because she couldn't cook the food. And I loved the romance that she had with the hunky gardener. I really enjoyed writing it so much. And I think it has struck a chord with readers. Because I've had a couple of people at readings say, it really made them reassess their life, their priorities, because she has to look at her life. She's a workaholic lawyer, and then she ends up in the countryside, far away from her job, and it makes her look at her life a different way. And they said that they related to that, and they looked at their lives a different way. So I think it's a good place to start.
Perfect.
I love that. Well, Sophie, it has been such an honor and a pleasure to have you here today. We are so grateful for your time. And we know that you're going through something really difficult, but wow, you seem amazing. I have never been so articulate in an interview as you are. So thank you for sharing your work and your heart and your stories with us. We are so grateful. And we can't wait for everyone to read the new book.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This has just been so much fun chatting. It's been lovely. Thank you.
And for all of you watching out there, be sure to tune in next week when Ron and Kristy will welcome Mary Beth Whalen to discuss her new novel, Every Moment Since. That show will air on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, October 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it will be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, October 18th.
Thanks to all of you out there for being with us. We'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.